Hey, what's up guys, it's BenBonk and welcome back to the 37th Slimekeep Devlog. In this devlog, I worked on the start screen for the game and also added a bit more polish overall. Also, if you're new here, Slimekeep is a fast-paced roguelike where you must kill and capture slimes to stop the corruption that's infected your land. Without further ado, let's get into it. So to start out, I decided it was time to work on a bit of the backstory or lore for the game. I had the idea to just display a few panels along with some text before taking the player to the start screen to kind of set the scene and explain the backstory. I drafted out a few ideas that I want to make sure to answer in these panels, such as why and how did the Slime King come to power, how has the corruption affected the player's life, and why aren't the player and pet affected. After quite a bit of brainstorming, I came up with some answers to those questions and drafted out the ideas for these 7 panels that I wanted to make. Now for who to make them, I decided to reach out to a fellow named Beta who makes some sick high-res pixel art and also made the in-screen art for the game. So while Beta's at work, let's move on. And well, something I haven't mentioned yet is that I've actually commissioned another member of the community, That Worm, to help with the start screen art and logo for the game. And here's what That Worm created. Honestly, it's amazing in my opinion. Everything is just so vibrant and action-packed, and the logo looks awesome and super slimy. So massive thanks to That Worm for creating this, and let me know what you think in the comments. But now that we had this cover art, I figured I might as well implement it in the start screen of the game. So I got to work redesigning the temporary start screen for the game, adding this art in. Shortly after, we had this, which looked awesome, and I also added in a few particles to spice things up a bit. Now, this was a good start, but at the same time, things looked a little static in my opinion. So I replaced this single piece of art into 2 separate pieces, one for the background and one for the logo. This way I could move around and animate the logo. So after messing around a bit with that, we now had the logo just kind of stretching and bouncing around the place subtly, which was a considerable improvement in my opinion and added a lot more life to the scene. So that right there is the new start screen. Pretty neat, but I also had the idea to make a bit of a pre-start screen, as I call it. You know, that place where developers usually show their logo and build up to the actual start screen. So I got to work and made this scene where some text fades in saying how I made the game, and remember that backstory I explained earlier? Well, I planned for that to go here. And I figured as I was still waiting for Beta to finish up, I might as well set up the kind of dialogue logic and panel switching logic to be prepared for when the art is done. So I found this really helpful tutorial on making dialogue with a typing effect by the man, the myth, the legend, Trevor Mock, who makes some really great Unity tutorials, so make sure to check him out. Anyways, I spent some time following this tutorial and eventually ended up with this simple system, where the text would type out on the screen and the player could also move on to new panels and skip text if desired. Though, if you desire to learn math and computer science or to refine your skills, check out Brilliant, who is sponsoring today's video. Brilliant is a learning platform that offers thousands of interactive courses, from foundational and advanced math to AI, data science, neural networks, and more, with new lessons added monthly. I personally took the statistics course on casino probability, which was really awesome as I personally find the topic quite interesting. All the learning I did was really hands-on with helpful explanations, which made the process enjoyable. I came out of the course learning a ton of stuff that I never realized, and I definitely recommend it. I personally like their formula in terms of learning, as everything just feels really hands-on and like you're learning valuable information, not just memorizing formulas or equations. But Brilliant also has tons of cool other math and computer science courses to try that offer visual, bite-sized lessons that keep you motivated. So if you want to give it a shot for free for a full 30 days, visit brilliant.org/benbonk or click the link in the description. Also, the first 200 people that click on my link will get 20% off Brilliant's annual premium subscription. So check it out, and thanks to Brilliant for sponsoring this video. So with that done, we still had a bit of time before Beta would finish up with the backstory panels, so I figured I would take this time to read some of your comments on the 34th Slimekeep Devlog and try to implement some feedback in regards to polish and general fixes. And after reading these comments for a while, I crafted this massive Trello list with a bunch of things that I wanted to work on. And to work I got. I started out by working a bit on this fountain break room. A lot of people, and I mean a lot, didn't like how you could drink from this fountain and not know your specific odds of either healing or taking damage. So I got to work adding some clarifying text and displayed this when the player walks to drink from the fountain. I also changed the damage from 3 to 2 if the player gets unlucky to not be so harsh. Now, this was a good start, but a few people also had the idea of having the odds of the fountain change depending on the day and how corrupted the world was. This sounded really neat, and soon after, I implemented this. So here's the player later in the game, on day 11, and they only have a 40% chance to heal full, making for some interesting dynamics. And speaking of dynamics, it would be a pretty terrible dynamic if you wishlist Slimekeep on Steam, because it's really bad for the Steam algorithm and punishes me every time you do so. So you should definitely not do that. Link is not in the description, so don't check there. Anyways, moving on, I got some fairly negative feedback about the new weapon UI, with this kind of fade background effect. So I decided to rework the weapon UI once again. Someone in my Discord server had the idea to make a border similar to what the Slimekeep minimap had, so I gave that a try and had this as a start. I then added in this slightly transparent background, and honestly, I thought it was starting to not look terrible. I then tweaked around the size of the UI and just shrunk it a bit to eliminate some more of the wasted space inside, which definitely helped. However, there was still the issue of certain weapons having weird looking UI if they have too many or too little bullets in their magazines. So to fix this, I added in a field for UI padding in the general weapon scriptable object, which I could set for each weapon in the game. This field would control this grid layout group that I added and would space out the bullet sprites accordingly, making things look so much better. So for example, if I change the pistol UI's padding away from the default, now the sprites are really spaced out. So I made these changes for every weapon, but we still weren't done just yet. I noticed that some bullet sprites were either too small or too big, making them just look really weird overall. So I added another field for UI size and fixed this issue up, which I'm really happy with. And yeah, that's the new weapon UI. Though staying on the subject of the weapon, I got some feedback about the weapon zoom in effect and how it wasn't the best, so I changed this to a standard screen shake, which was an improvement in my opinion and felt really satisfying. Then to add even more impact to the weapon shooting, I messed around with this bullet shell fly off effect, just reusing the destructible object code. And overall, I'm super happy with how this effect turned out, and I just feel like it makes the weapon so much more satisfying to shoot. And finally, on the subject of shooting, I messed around with this kind of brief slow-mo effect whenever the player shoots a bullet. It's kind of subtle, and I thought it looked kind of cool, but I don't really plan to keep it in the game as it was more just something fun to mess around with. But let me know what you think. Moving on, I made a few small changes to the TNT boxes in the rooms by lowering their hit points significantly. It used to take a few shots for them to explode, but now it only takes 1 to 2 depending on their size, which just makes for much more satisfying gameplay in my opinion. I also removed some of the frames on these explosions to make them a bit more snappy and realistic, and made these kinds of craters that are left behind after they explode to really sell their impact. Now, another piece of feedback I got was in the form of the player's house. It seemed like most people weren't huge fans of the redesign, and mainly just how it looked really old looking. So I just decided to hop into Sprite and attempted to kind of remove this oldness, I guess? I don't know, but here's how it turned out, and I think it's an improvement overall. Now next up, I got a comment suggesting that I create some kind of floor tile or overlay to spice things up, which was a good point that I never really thought of, as the floor right now is pretty plain looking. So I attempted to create a few low opacity overlays to see how they would look on top of the floor. I started with this effect, but wasn't a huge fan. I then created this, and actually that looked decent. It's sort of subtle, but I definitely think it adds a ton of texture to the floors. So I settled on adding this texture to every floor tile in the game, which was extremely tedious to say the least. But I got the job done, and now every room has these tiles. I think it's a pretty good change overall, but let me know what you think in the comments. Next up, remember that screen shake I made for the weapon? Well, I got some feedback that there should be a way to change the amount of screen shake that the weapon uses. So I made this slider inside of the slime book to allow the player to do just this. And with that said, I decided to make a new build of the game to release to my beta testers, as I felt like I made enough progress since the last beta release. Everything seemed to be going well until I was really awakened by this glitch where the walls in the games would just disappear completely. This was a weird one that had to do with the Z layers of the tile maps in the game, but thankfully I seemed to fix it. The something I didn't realize to fix was this bug that some of my playtesters found, which was that slimes would basically push outside of the walls of the game if you fail this capture minigame in the corner of a room. So I made some fairly simple code with an on-trigger exit statement to just teleport these slimes back to the player's position if this happens. And with this said, remember that cutscene that beta was making? Well, it was finally done, and holy cow, it looked amazing. Here are the panels they made right here. We've got this nice happy scene of what I call Slimetopia. Then we have this scene of the player being happy with the Slime King and getting along with him. Then we have a scene of things starting to go a bit wrong, and another of the king becoming corrupted. And now the player is big mad and crafts this capture gun, and then he sets off on a quest to destroy the Slime King. Together, these panels were awesome and really did blow me away, so huge thanks to Beta for making them. I then spent the next few hours actually implementing these tiles into the cutscene in the pre-start screen area, as well as setting up the actual dialogue to go with them. And with all that done, here's what the cutscene looked like. Again, I just think it looks so good, and I'm really happy with it overall, and I think it does at least a decent job of setting the stage for the game. Also, don't worry, you can skip this cutscene by pressing escape at any time, so you don't have to rewatch it every time you open the game. Anyways, with that done, I also got some feedback about the borders for many UI elements in the game, such as the casino panels or the wardrobe. So I got to making a new general UI border to use for all these panels to make things not look so plain. I ended up with this panel right here, and again, kind of based it off the mini-map border. I threw it into Unity, and now here's what this new panel looked like. I thought it looked okay in my opinion, but not great. So with some feedback from my Discord server, I revised it to this more checkerboard pattern. Though this example was a bit too cluttered. So I spaced out the checkerboard a bit more, and now I thought this border was looking good, so I applied it to the casino games also. But on the topic of skin changing, I had a bunch of skins in the game, but no real way to actually unlock them. So I wanted to fix this. I started out by coming up with descriptions on how to unlock each skin and adding this blurb of text explaining this under each skin in game. I also later added this text that I plan to display how close the player was to unlocking that skin based on a variable. And about those variables, I plan to just store the data like how I'd store any other data in my game, using my save manager solution. However, the problem is, after each run, this profile data gets deleted, which is a problem because I want certain things to persist through multiple runs, such as how many slime balls the players collected in their lifetime. So after a bit of contemplation, I just decided to use Unity's player pref system. Now, I know this isn't good practice, but it was just an easy solution that wouldn't be difficult to implement. So I coded up a few variables to keep track of certain stats, set them up, and got them to actually display under each respective skin. Finally, I set them up to actually unlock when the condition had been met, and yeah, there we go, Slimekeep now has skin unlocking. Though what Slimekeep didn't have was a samurai skin, which I needed to add with the addition of the samurai boss because each boss in the game has a player skin to go along with it. So I got to work creating this skin and eventually created this base samurai helmet to go off of that I was really happy with. I then animated everything, which as usual took forever, and popped this guy into the game. And yeah, there we go, new samurai skin, pretty neat in my opinion. But anyways, that's all I have for now, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.